What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, we did have that Xbox podcast where Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, they all sat down and discussed the future vision for the Xbox brand. And they had quite a bit to say, but not necessarily things that I feel like lived up to the hype, but we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Respawn apparently working on a big-time game people have been waiting quite a while for, and next generation seems like it might be more powerful and maybe more portable than we were expecting. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps it a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, if you're a member here on the channel, you get Newswave ad-free and early. If you want to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Phil Spencer and, well, his discussion around going multi-platform with some of these first-party games, because they did have a lot to say in regards to these games going to other systems and exactly why they're doing that. But there was one key part of this that I think is important, especially for a lot of the discourse I see on social media. We can see this, though, posted up over on VGC, where they say Xbox head Phil Spencer says he'd like to see Sony and Nintendo bring its games to Xbox, but that he isn't holding his breath. Quote, "This is not for me like some kind of bartering system. We're doing it for the better of Xbox's business." And I always see this all the time on places like X, where people go, okay, they're getting Hi-Fi Rush. What do we get? Like, are they going to send Mario over, or is Sony going to send over Ghost of Tsushima or something like that? No, Microsoft just, it's not a trade. Like, it's not like sports teams trading players or something like that. No, Microsoft is going to trade for money. Like that's the idea. They want to be able to bring in more revenue to then fund more projects. It's as simple as that. So I wouldn't count on Nintendo sending over any major games, or Sony, as Phil Spencer says, he wouldn't hold his breath on that one. Also, Payday 3 came out, 5 or 6 months ago, something like that, and it hasn't been going well for Starbreeze. In fact, we can see this is posted up. This is over on GameDeveloper.com, with Starbreeze commenting on the performance of the co-op shooter, saying that it's performing at a significantly lower levels than it would like. And the developer explained sales and player activity are way below expectations, and said rehabilitating the title remains its biggest focus and absolute priority. In fact, I decided to look before recording this video, and Payday 2 on Steam has just over 25,000 players. Payday 3 has roughly 300 players. Yeah, quite a difference there from the newer game that obviously Starbreeze wants people to play versus the older 10-year-old plus game, right? And here's the biggest thing with these live service sequels. When the new one comes out, if it's not drastically different, I mean, really offers a major advantage over the older one, why would you just play the older one? There's 10 years potentially worth of content that's been built up with different updates and content drops and seasons. And Payday 3 kind of just felt like more of Payday 2, and that was sort of it. So it seems like Starbreeze is now realizing that and is going back, as they say, to rehabilitate the game. Whatever that means, I guess we'll see at some point. But for now, yeah, it appears Payday 2 significantly more popular online, especially on Steam, than Payday 3, and that's not great for Starbreeze. Oh, and we have good news for Ys fans who are waiting to hear about the Western release for Ys 10 Nordics, as we had this trailer that was posted up over on Nice America's YouTube channel, and it does announce that Is 10 Nordics will be releasing actually in the West this fall. So about a year after it came out in Japan. Of course, this coming out on the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC. It's looked great in all the different trailers they've shown, and it had good scores for the most part when it released in Japan like 5 or 6 months ago, something like that. So a year for localization, not too bad. Typically, we have to wait quite a bit longer for some of these games, so I guess keep an eye out for the official release date for Is 10 Nordics, but good to hear we'll actually be getting it later this year. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this Xbox podcast that happened, and leading up to 3 p.m. Eastern time when it was set to debut, we really weren't sure how this was going to go down. Was it going to be a live stream? Was it going to be one of those YouTube premieres? Was it just going to be the podcast that just drops online and you can kind of skip through it as you need to? Turns out it was just a podcast, and it was just pre-recorded, dropped right on YouTube, and you can play it at full speed or fast forward. And that's kind of what happened, as we had all this information start to drop almost out of order from different outlets who were jumping through and summarizing key points. but it was about 22 or 23 minutes long. And yeah, we had Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, and Phil Spencer kind of discuss the idea of some of these first-party Xbox and PC exclusives going to PlayStation and Switch, and then also talking about key points with Game Pass and even plans of next generation, which we'll get to a little later on in the show. But let's start from the top, as I did go through the video and tried to put a lot of the pertinent information down in bullet points. But again, we'll start here. That's with exclusivity. Obviously, a big talking point going into this podcast, and they said specifically 4 games are going to other consoles. There's no change to fundamental exclusive strategy, as in, okay, when they announce games, these will all be going to PlayStation and Switch. No, right now it seems almost like they're testing the waters, if you will, with, as they say, games that are more than a year old. And we have 2 that'll be community driven, and 2 they say are a bit smaller, and they're looking to just outright drive more business and value from them, which, as they say, means that they might be able to put more money into a sequel or maybe other releases sort of in that universe for the game. So 4 total. They did not name the games. However, based on what they said here and previous reports, the games we believe that they'll be is Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Pentiment, and Hi-Fi Rush. We don't know when they're coming out necessarily, but it appears that they are at least set to be revealed in the, we'll say, not too distant future. There's belief that Nintendo will have a direct in the coming weeks. People thought it would have been this week, and there's actually been discussion about it being delayed, or who really knows. But look, it's February. Most likely there'll be some kind of direct, partner direct, or something. Maybe Pentiment or Hi-Fi Rush is announced there. Maybe it's just a press release. So we'll keep an eye out for that one. But they did say that Starfield and Indiana Jones are not part of those 4 titles. And in fact, at this time, no announcements around those games going to other platforms, which completely contradicts some of the reports that I would say got the internet really riled up. Remember that over the weekend on like a Sunday, we started to see reports around Starfield, Indiana Jones, Gears of War, like all kinds of games all of a sudden making the jump. Not the case, at least currently, according to Phil Spencer. He also says that it believes in the next 5 to 10 years, exclusive games will become a smaller part of the industry. And I mean, as we go forward and these games get more and more expensive, yeah, you're gonna have to look even outside of your own platform just to make sure you're bringing in, or at least turning a profit on budgets that could exceed $500 million very, very quickly. I also noticed that they really wanted to emphasize that just because these 4 games are going to other platforms doesn't necessarily reflect on future announcements of new titles also going, or you having to really wait and be like, oh, well, eventually they'll show up on the PlayStation or the Switch. Not necessarily the case, at least right now, so they're just keeping it to these 4 games, and they'll be announced, as they mention, in the future when the teams behind them are ready. Okay, next we did have Game Pass. All games will go into Game Pass day 1. That's something, obviously, they've been holding to since they made that announcement years and years and years ago, but they wanted to emphasize once more that's still the plan, all right? So they're not really doing anything different currently with Activision Blizzard. In fact, they doubled down and said, yes, Activision Blizzard games are coming to Game Pass, and they're starting with Diablo 4 March 28th. All right, so a month and a half from now, we'll have Diablo 4 dropping in. Game Pass will only be available on Xbox and PC. They don't have plans at this time to get it on Nintendo's platform or PlayStation, although I feel like most likely it's because Nintendo and Sony don't necessarily want it right now, but either way, Xbox, PC, crossplay and cross-save are extremely important to them. They said this over and over and over again, and if you've experienced Xbox Play Anywhere, yeah, it's incredibly convenient, actually, especially if you have a handheld like a ROG Ally, and you can jump between that and your console. It really is a good experience. But they did mention, kind of in passing, that they have 34 million Game Pass members. It appears that's not necessarily 100% true, because the 34 million is a mixture of Xbox Live Gold that got renamed to Game Pass Core, and then the Game Pass Ultimate members that would be able to take advantage of this Diablo 4 March 28th release. That seems lower than I would have thought when they mixed in Xbox Live Gold. So I think we need some more clarification on that one. Plenty of people, I'm sure, will be following up as we go through over the weekend with Microsoft as best as they can, because they are well off of the goal that they had set from those internal slides, like 100 million in the next 4 years. they got some work to do. And then, of course, software and digital libraries. This is, again, a point that was made by people online. Look, if the Xbox console goes away, what do I do? All my digital library's gone. Well, they do mention the digital entitlement or game entitlement. They didn't say ownership, by the way. Entitlement is across multiple platforms, of course, console and PC, which I think that's really cool to have cross-buy or cross-subscribe, if you will, with Game Pass. But technically, it would exist on PC through Windows, and they say it's important to keep compatibility between generations, and they really worked hard to push confidence around your digital library not going away. And then as they closed out, a June showcase was announced, which, not surprising, but we don't have E3 anymore, so, it's kind of up in the air when they want to do this, but it appears we have that to look forward to in, roughly 4 months. They will have their typical E3, not E3 showcase. But overall, with all of the expectation, the hype, the arguing, everything that happened on social media over the last week and a half or so, didn't really live up to the hype. I mean, they came out and explained everything pretty well for the 4 different games and their path forward, but it wasn't as explosive, I guess, as was being outlined by even some media outlets, again, naming things like Starfield, that being a big one, Indiana Jones, so yeah, you probably could have skipped this one and just kind of read the bullet points and been fine, but now we can kind of look towards that showcase in June, although they did talk about their next generation system, which was kind of strange, so we'll get to that in a minute. Next up, let's talk about Respawn and apparently a single-player Star Wars game that they're working on right now that people are going to be excited about because it's something they've been asking for quite some time. Now, this was posted up over on X from Tom Henderson, as he was quote tweeting a person saying that EA still won't make Battlefront 3, does respond saying, no, but Respawn is cooking a Star Wars single-player experience I think a lot of people have wanted for a long time. Now, Tom Henderson does mention they'll do an insider gaming report when they finalize some details, so we'll look out for that because I had a few thoughts here. One, it seems like it's a first-person shooter, because when I saw that, I said, well, I mean, we had Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor. Is it just the third one in the trilogy for that? Because the way that Jedi Survivor ended, yeah, go figure. There's probably going to be another Star Wars game in that kind of setup, that Uncharted action-adventure style game with lightsabers. But no, it being a first-person shooter, I then thought, okay, remember the old days of Dark Forces and Jedi Knight? Would they do that? Or could this be a sequel to Republic Commando, which was a really, really cool game back then. I remember playing it on the original Xbox. Also, it was on PC, but it kind of puts you in the visor of the clone troopers back in the day, and it was sort of like them pulling from Rainbow Six at the time that was extremely popular, but making a more of a tactical first-person shooter, kind of squad-based, where you gave commands, and it was definitely a different perspective for the Star Wars universe at that time that was completely obsessed with either flying around an X-Wing or swinging around a lightsaber. It was also extremely impressive visually at that time with some of the effects they do with the visor, kind of similar to Metroid Prime, where it'd like fog up or you'd like destroy a bug or something, it would splatter guts all over it. But I would be really interested to see if that is the case, that we get a new Republic Commando, because that seems like it would work really, really well online with co-op, especially if you have just a 4-person squad and you're going through all these different areas, kind of tactical style as clone troopers. That could be really, 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 really fun. So we'll keep an eye on this report, because if that is the case, that could be one of my more anticipated games going forward. So exciting stuff, and we'll see what Insider Gaming has for us, hopefully in the coming weeks. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Microsoft and their passing comment about their next generation device. This was odd because it was like 2 sentences that Sarah Bond threw out there, and then they just kept moving along, even though it was a very surprising statement to make based on the history for hardware in games. But this is a quote, again, from the podcast, and this was transcribed by The Verge. Sarah Bond says, "We've got more to come. There's some exciting stuff coming out in hardware that we're going to share this holiday. We're also invested in the next generation roadmap. What we're really focused on there is delivering the largest technical leap you will have ever seen in a hardware generation, which makes it better for players and better for creators and the visions that they're building." So, okay, this holiday, we know that we've heard that there is that controller that is coming out that's going to like be direct to cloud connection, so you don't even need a console to connect to your router, similar to what the Stadia controller did. And then I'll have like advanced haptic feedback, all that sort of thing. So great, that's what I'm expecting. Although I guess they could throw out a console revision and call it a day there. I'm not expecting any kind of pro system from them. I think they're just moving right to the next generation in seriously 3 or 4 years. But then to follow that up, Phil Spencer with The Verge says, I'm very proud of the work that the hardware team is doing, not only for this year, but also into the future. We're really thinking about creating hardware that sells to gamers because of the unique aspects of the hardware. It's kind of an unleashing of the creativity capability of our hardware team that I'm really excited about. I'm a big fan of handhelds. I'm a big fan, but nothing to announce now. So the biggest technical leap that we've seen in gaming when it comes to hardware going from one generation to the next. And I mean, look, we've gone from 2D to 3D, we've gone from SD to HD era, and now I'm thinking, okay, what's the really big jump? I guess this past generation would have been mechanical hard drive to the SSD being just standardized across the field. I almost wonder if it is that cloud computing sector. What if they end up coming out with a hybrid, they partner with ARM, and maybe even they're bringing NVIDIA, and they figure out a way to have their handheld, which is, just standard handheld that maybe is as strong as an Xbox Series S or around there in 2027, 2028. But then when you dock it, it does tap into cloud computing and just becomes like a powerful console that can run some pretty high fidelity games, or who knows, maybe they just do full on AI cloud computing and it takes everything to the next level that we can't even imagine right now. That's the only thing I can think of, is that we get to a position where your system starts to become aware over time. It's a bigger technical leap than what we've had in the past. It's hard to really envision that, but it does appear, at least for people who are concerned about Microsoft leaving the hardware game, no, it appears they're looking to push things even further, and I feel like this statement was mostly designed just to provide confidence once again, which is really what this podcast was all set out to do, was to be like, okay, everyone calm down. We're not getting out of gaming. We're not getting out of hardware, and wait till you see what we have cooking up in the next couple of years. Also, I'm pretty confident now that we are going to get an Xbox handheld, whether that's just something that's randomly announced in the next year or two, or they look to launch their next generation with a console and then a hybrid system that would work with that Xbox Play Anywhere. It just, to me, seems like it makes a ton of sense based on them saying, oh yeah, Xbox will be across all different platforms with a screen, like our handheld that has it built in. And before we go to the comments of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what did you think of the Xbox business update? Okay, 16% say it was good. They answered the questions I had. 24% say it was fine. Nothing new really came out of it. 59% say it really felt unnecessary and could have just been a press release. Yeah, I think you're correct about that. I am not going to push back on the idea of it could have just been an email, could have been an Xbox Wire post. Again, I feel like the presence of these three, Sarah Bond, Matt Booty, Phil Spencer, was just to provide backing and confidence for just the Xbox user base going forward, saying, we're not going anywhere. Yes, we're going to put these 4 games that we're not even going to name right now, but we're going to put them on other platforms. Doesn't mean all the other games are going over. We just want to see where we are with revenue for some of these titles, and we're all on board for next generation. And who knows, maybe some other crazy, wacky ideas. So I feel like there was just more of a human element there doing a podcast like this, as opposed to just typing up a press release and dropping it online. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day. We'll start with this one here. This is from Batman, who says, John looks like a happy child who just got N64 for Christmas with that thumbnail. And that was a good Christmas. I got the Nintendo 64 with Pokemon Snap. It came in like this big, let me know if anyone else out there got this. It was like in this big plastic casing where I think it came with an extra controller as well. It was Pokemon Snap, extra controller, Nintendo 64. And then I think I also got like Lego Racers that day, and I feel like I got Beetle Adventure Racing like the next week. My birthday is like right around Christmas, so I just get all kinds of stuff right then and there. But that was an awesome Christmas. Only issue, my TV did not have the yellow, red, and white AV plug-in, so I had to wait till the next day, the 26th, when stores opened, to go out and get the little RF adapter that I could screw into the cable jack in the back. Yeah, those were the good old days. And we'll finish up here with the comment from the members section. This is from Waluigi, says, maybe Microsoft is gearing up for the inevitable cloud-only future. Again, they did talk about entitlements as opposed to ownership, which I think that is a very important choice of words there. the digital side of things, the future that we all assume to be less and really maybe no physical products and all rentals, really, right? Just entitlements or just access to cloud gaming. And yeah, I do think that is kind of the way that Microsoft is attempting to push things, but I think even they realize that that's not necessarily going to be one-to-one across the board. There will still be people who like native experiences, and that's why they're continuing to build hardware that apparently is going to make a massive technical leap and won't just be a little Fire Stick, Amazon Fire Stick-like device that you plug in and connect to the cloud. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was Xbox's business update event. What'd you think about it, especially after about 10 days of nonstop Twitter spaces, arguing and just discourse online leading up to it? And then what about Microsoft's plans for the next generation being this massive technical leap? And would you like to see a sequel to Republic Commando from Respawn? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.